Well, Patrick, we're back and it's a new year.
Happy New Year, Your Honor. I hope your holidays were swell.
Mine were great. I want to remind you and our viewers of something you said on our last program of the year.
Right out of the gate.
You said if our congressman,
Yes.
Congressman Bouchon,
Lapdog Larry Bouchon, yes.
voted for the impeachment inquiry, you would run for Congress. And just so you remember what you said,
Okay.
we're going to play that back.
All right.
If he votes articles of impeachment against Joe Biden, I'm announcing for the 8th District congressional seat right now.
Are you here tonight to announce your candidacy?
I didn't get to see the playback. Technically, I said, if he votes for articles of impeachment, I will announce for Congress. Now, what he did, along with all of the other sheep in the Republican Party, is to vote for an inquiry into whether or not there should be articles of impeachment. So, Lapdog Lair, you still got a chance to do the right thing. If they really come up with articles, we expect you to be intelligent enough to know what a sham that is.
You're not a candidate.
I'm not a candidate yet, but
Yes, sir.
we have consigned 2023 to the graveyard of history.
Thank God.
We have put away the earrings we got for Christmas, made our resolutions, blueberries on your oatmeal, that sort of thing, health things, right?
I have made some health. I don't want to get into too much detail, but I have. I really have.
Well, and I've had eye surgery. In fact, all the people that have been doing health things for me in the last quarter should be underwriters for this show. You know, maybe that's what we should get is in our doddering old age, all of our health care providers.
I remember when we used to meet at the end of the day, have a drink, and
Yes.
talk about sports and what's going on. Now we talk about the latest operation we had, or procedure.
But 2024 should be one whale of a year for Shively Shoulders to have plenty to talk about.
Plenty to talk about, and I hope we add to the discussion and enlightenment and not to all the generation of heat that's going on right now.
One of our strengths has always been mutual respect. We allow each other to finish, and I respect your right to be wrong.
And you never let the facts get in your way. I appreciate that fact. State of Colorado ruled, their Supreme Court, a 4-3 decision that Trump cannot be on the ballot based upon their interpretation of the 14th Amendment, Section 3.
And now the Secretary of Maine has joined Colorado in arriving through her procedure at the same conclusion.
And Trump filed a petition for writ certiorari with the Supreme Court.
He did.
And I think this is not a pro-Trump or anti-Trump. It's the fact that that decision, how you decide who can be on the ballot for a presidential candidate, should be decided at the federal level by the highest court of the land. Do you not agree?
I hate to start the year with agreement, but I indeed believe that there need to be a uniform system of electing the only national office that all of us get to vote for.
And the only office where, I said the only one, the requirements to be a candidate for president of the United States are set forth in the Constitution.
They are, U.S. citizen, age 35, that sort of thing. And I agree with you. I believe the Supreme Court will indeed, of course, get involved, as they did, decided wrongly, in Bush versus Gore. We have seen the U.S. Supreme Court hand the presidency to George W. Bush when they intervened in the Florida state election counting of those ballots. So I fully expect them to get involved and say, you can't do this,
I'll leave
or
it
you
for another
can't.
day to talk about Bush v. Gore, but here's the situation. We can't live in the past. The Supreme Court should grasp this issue, and the chief should think very carefully who writes the ultimate opinion, and they should put aside their partisan
Yes, I agree.
differences, which have unfortunately come to light publicly, which I think is very, very unfortunate, because there's some bright minds on that court on both sides of the aisle, so to speak.
Yes.
And I would think that that Gorsuch is the person that should write that opinion. He has credibility with both sides.
And I think, we could have a whole show on this,
Yeah.
this issue, but all of us, even if you're not a lawyer, you of course know there's a 14th Amendment, and you know that there were amendments to the Constitution passed as what are called Civil War amendments.
Right.
Nobody, I think, for the last 150 years has ever thought that clause number 3 in the 14th Amendment would still have...
It's never been litigated.
Yeah, vitality.
That's right.
And here we have an insurrection clause that was passed, obviously, to keep Confederate generals from being national officers.
And here's the irony of that. Despite that amendment, became the law of the land.
Yes.
The Constitution, the highest form of legal parameters. About 10 years later, Democrats were elected were former Confederates. So,
Well, it will be interesting to see. I have no doubt that they will take it up. I hope they're unanimous, to your point.
Right.
I don't know who will write it, but they ought to have a unanimous view. Frankly, we could go to the merits. I think there's a whale of an argument that former President Trump led a rebellion or insurrection, but that's not for me to decide. I think they will decide it. I hope it is not a 5-4 decision.
no, it has to be as close to unanimous as possible.
Well, we have a good show today to start off 2024 here on Shively Shoulders. All of our 3,000 viewers, well, just now, it's really 3 million is our audience, that are watching, will be happy that we're going to talk about at least many of the things we talk about. But one of them is the General Assembly session in the state of Indiana with a longtime serving member.
Senator Vaneta Becker. And before we bring her out, one thing about Senator Becker, I've known her for a number of years. I think anybody who knows her, has watched her work in the General Assembly, knows one thing. She's not left, right. She is what she believes is in the best interest of Hoosiers, what's the best interest of her constituents, and she is very independent, and that's why I think she's been there as long as she has.
She is truly one of the good guys.
Absolutely. And we're back, and our guest this evening is Senator Vaneta Becker, longtime serving senator representing this area of the state. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
Long time serving somehow doesn't seem to encapsulate 42 years in the Indiana legislature.
Yeah.
That's a long time, and you've lived to talk about it.
Yeah.
And this is something that I want your opinion on just because I'm interested and we've been friends a long time. Before we get to the legislative session, you were the first, I think, candidate of the major parties here legitimately ran for mayor of Evansville.
Yes, I did, back in 91.
As a female, as a candidate back in 1991, ran a credible and close race against Frankie?
Frankie the Deuce.
He calls him Frankie the Deuce. And I just want to know your perspective. We've elected our first female mayor. You were there years before. Anything you want to share with us on how you watched that and feel about it?
Well, I think it's great. It's past time, and not only have we elected a female, but we've also elected an African-American female. So we've hit 2 tiers. And I think Stephanie, I've known Stephanie, worked with her a little bit. We've been on some joint appearances. And I think she'll do a good job.
Great.
While I was on vacation, I read this book. Professor McLeod from U of E wrote a book about on a little bit of Evansville history. And it went into race relations in this community, which has not always been the best.
No, that's true.
And the chapter on Stephanie had not occurred yet. And so having read that, we have come a long way.
We sure have.
42 years, you've seen it all. My perspective right now, and you've been there when the Democrats were, you had to have been there a long time
I was.
ago, if you can remember when the Democrats were in control.
Dennis Avery.
Dennis, sure.
Mike Phillips.
And
Mike Phillips.
so, preview for us this upcoming session. Is it a short one or a long one?
It's a short one.
Short one. So what kind of things can we expect?
Well, I think the leadership on both sides in the House and the Senate, they want to get out as quickly as possible because people will be going home to campaign. And I personally I'm fine with that. We have to be done by March the 14th. And I've heard that they may try to get out the week before just because of the basketball tournament.
NCAA tournament, yeah.
There you go. So anything we should be looking for in terms of initiatives? I got to tell you, from my perspective, it got a little ideological out there for my taste. Is that going to be back, or is there a
I
big...
think they'll try to avoid that.
Okay.
What I say is they don't want people to know what crazy stuff sometimes happened.
I see that you've signed on, I think, as a co-sponsor to what I think is a great bill. Cindy Ledbetter, rep from Newburgh, sponsoring a bill to make sure that semi-tractor trailers aren't driven on the highways of Indiana by artificial intelligence or whatever.
Right. I think Senator Toms has a bill on that too, and he's tried it last year, and I've signed on to it as well. I mean, I just don't think that's a good idea, and I think they'll find the problem is you got semis, the weight of those trucks, and you need somebody that can see and know what's going on.
Well, I think that these self-propelled vehicles, so to speak, some lawsuits have come out of California that's going to slow that down quite a bit.
Right. And they should, I think.
Let me ask you this, and we can talk about the legislative agenda, and from your perspective, probably not a lot of eye-opening things are going to happen, hopefully not.
Hopefully not, I don't think so.
But the real question I have for you, who's going to be the Republican gubernatorial candidate?
Well, my wish and hope is Suzanne Crouch, and I back her 100%. She's not crazy, and
I can see that now. I'm not crazy.
Well, that's become kind of one of the prerequisites, because we can't say that about everybody.
she's worked hard. She knows about relationships in the legislature. She's been there. You know, she took my place. I lobbied her. I'll never forget. I lobbied her to take my place because she had been an auditor and a commissioner, and I thought she would be great in the House when I moved over to the Senate in 2005, and I'll never forget, she said, well, you know, I really don't like all the politics locally. Is there a lot of politics up there? I said, you haven't seen anything yet.
And her story is an interesting story.
It is.
I mean, she started out in Republican politics as a precinct committee person.
Right.
And sort of worked her way up in local party leadership. Then was an office holder. Well, she was
She was county chairman.
county chairman.
She was chairman when I ran for mayor.
Right.
Is that right? Uh-huh. She ran unsuccessful. Sam Humphrey beat her, I think, in her first race. She ran for auditor, and I think Sam Humphrey, maybe it was his second term, but I think Suzanne lost her first race for auditor.
I think you may be right.
Yeah.
But look, chairman of the local party,
Yeah.
an auditor, commissioner, state rep, lieutenant governor. I mean,
Pretty good resume.
And
Yeah.
auditor of the state,
as
too.
auditor of the state. Right,
Yeah, I
right.
forgot about that one. And chairman of the Channel 9 auction.
That's right.
That's right, she had been.
The year that my Lutkow brothers and I almost burned the place down.
So, Senator Becker, my fear is in this legislative session, it being a short session, that ideological, hard right wing, the people that think the Kinsey Institute is filming sex with kids and don't want us to use the word sex in the schools and, you know, burning books and all of that kind of stuff. Are we going to see a flurry of that?
I don't think so.
I mean, I don't think Governor Holcomb can control it.
He can't control
He's
it.
not a member of that
No,
group.
he's not.
Well, the most powerful person when the General Assembly is in session is the Speaker of the House.
That's right. And Todd Houston, he wants to get in and get out. He's got all 100 members of the House up for re-election. Now, I don't know how many of them are going to have races, but he will. So I think I think the one thing that they want to try to deal with, but I just hope they don't screw it up, is, you know, with the pandemic, kids learning got behind, it's still behind,
Right.
and they are talking about holding kids back in the third grade if they can't read. Well, I think what they should do, and I talked to Dr. Smith about this, and I talked to the lobbyist for the School Board Association, and what they would like to see, and I agree with this, is to test them in the second grade. And if they're not up to par, provide funding for summer school so that they get summer school that year and then test them again in the third grade. And if they need it again, more summer school.
Has there been a summer study committee on this issue?
Well, you know, there hasn't. The problem with the legislature on education is they think they know more about education than teachers and principals and superintendents, and they don't.
No.
And what happens is that they pass things like a bill that was a good bill, I supported it. They'd never let me on education because they know I would never agree with a lot of the stuff that they have done, and I wouldn't have, and didn't. But I think that you have to, science of reading, we just passed it last year. We haven't even given it a chance to work. I talked to Dr. Smith before I came here. He said they just sent 20 teachers to a school in, and I can't remember where it was at, Illinois or Ohio, somewhere out of state for this special training. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know, he agreed. He thought the idea that I discussed about testing kids in the second grade, he thought that was a good idea. And one thing he said, too, is, I said, well, do they always provide enough funding for summer school? He said, no, it's always just a percentage of the budget. And I said, well, they need to make sure they provide adequate funding for those kids if they want to get them up to par. You know, the problem you have is if you hold them back without providing summer school, then you're going to have 8th grade kids picking on 6th grade kids.
Correct.
And there's another thing, too. I see this every day in my work. The momentum towards homeschooling, which I think is a horrible idea. And you got to be very careful what you do on education initiatives with public schools and such, because some of that stuff will just be more fuel for the...
I agree.
And I think we've learned that high stakes testing is not the solution.
No.
Just to point out that we got a problem and leave it there is silly. Democrats, we get accused of just throwing money at problems. I got no problem with identifying the problem, but we have to help it. And that's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Did we see some good numbers on graduation rates?
Yeah, they've improved, and that's a very good sign.
You have a close relationship with someone who's had some years on the school board and probably feels the same way you do about that.
He does.
You tell Andy we said hello.
I will.
You
know, he's working at Bossy High School 2 days a week as a
I saw you over Christmas and you told me that. Bossy High School's lucky to have you, Andy Garino.
Talk about Andy and talk about school boards. There was a move, there was a bill last session, I think, to try to politicize how members of the school boards are.
Yeah.
Is that dead?
I don't know. The Senate, it didn't go anywhere in the Senate, and it really didn't get legs in the House either. They wanted to make it partisan, the school board elections. And I just, of all things, we don't need to make school board elections to be partisan.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly. So let me ask you this. Are there any bills that you're aware of, I know it's a short session, of particular interest, local things, I don't know, economic development or land or something, that have to do with Southwest Indiana?
Well, I don't know that we have anything specific. I am filing a bill that I heard from a constituent who got, she was turned over to a collection agency because she hadn't paid a bill with a nursing home, but she didn't even know she owed the money. They had never billed her. So this just requires that they have to bill first before and let them know that they owe it. And I think Jim Toms is on that. I am carrying a bill for the lieutenant governor that deals with housing, trying to make it more affordable and pick up some grants where we haven't had them in the past. And I'm also introducing a resolution to do an obesity study. So if you just look around,
Indiana really does not rank very well
We
in public
don't.
health.
In public health issues. And we don't spend a lot of money on
That's
public
right.
health.
Well-
We used to be about 48th.
we're better now since we put the money into going back to local health departments, and that became, and why it became controversial, it was a local option for the counties, but I've talked to, what's his name over at the health department?
Ken Spear?
Ken Spear and the executive director.
I know who you mean.
I can't think of his name right now, but they're very pleased. And it was up to the county council to opt in. It wasn't up to the
Right.
legislature. It didn't dictate it, but I had a couple of people, just a couple, that were just adamant that they were going to come after me if I supported that bill. But I supported it because it was truly misunderstood. It doesn't dictate anything to local boards of health. It just gives them more funding. I talked to Maria Del Rio Hoover, and she works with them, and she's on their board, and she was very supportive, and she thinks it's going to allow us to do some things that we haven't been able to do at all.
It's great to hear. So in our last minute here, 42 years, would you be on the ballot this coming year?
Yes.
Have you made an announcement as to whether you are going to stand for election?
I haven't.
Are you ready to do that today?
Yeah.
No.
Well, this was an opportunity.
Yeah.
That's up to
Well,
you.
at this point, I intend to run again.
There you have it. There's a first. Shively and Shoulders, you heard it here first.
At least she went that far. You haven't committed at all.
Larry Bouchon hadn't voted those articles of impeachment yet. If he does, I'm running for Congress, Larry. I'm coming for you, pal. Vaneta, thank you for your service, first of all, 42 years. You are truly one of the good guys. That's from a Democrat. You know I've always supported
Yes.
what you're doing. Our best for you and the legislative session.
Thanks for being here. Good luck.
Thank you.
When we come back, I'll take a couple more shots at Patrick.
State Senator Vaneta Becker, and there's a first, a scoop for Shively and Shoulders in 2024. She's going to stand for re-election.
You said probably.
Well, I mean, probably.
I mean, I don't want to put words in her mouth. I hope you're right. I hope she's going to do it
Yeah,
one more
but come
time.
on, how many politicians say probably and then
I hope you're
don't
right.
do it?
Hope you're right. Speaking of the elections coming up
Yes.
this year, at the national level, what do you think the main issues will be?
You know, I have a feeling in my gut that things in this world happen so quickly. I'm not certain, even though the polls would suggest that it's Donald Trump's, he's got 2 or 3 criminal trials between now and November. The polls would suggest Biden is, and he says, I'm only running because of this guy. People are uncomfortable with him. I'm not certain we know who the nominees or either party
Much less
are
the
gonna
issues,
be.
huh?
Your former party wanted to talk about the economy until every indicator says, you know what, the economy's pretty good.
Here's the problem.
So we're hearing about the border again.
But you're correct. A lot of objective criteria show the economy is doing well. Mm-hmm. Unemployment continues to increase.
Inflation's under control.
And Powell has said, Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve Board, says we've basically done it. He's declared victory. I hope it's not like when Bush declared victory over.
Yes,
but
in Iraq.
Because Jerome Powell missed this inflation situation early on, he caught up, and I think the board has done a good job. But here's the interesting thing. Yeah, gas prices are a little high, and it affects everybody. It affects transportation costs of products and people. But the public opinion is just not there. The people aren't just, for some reason, buying it.
I think that's what the national media says, but the fact is real wages are up, measured against however they measure
And
real wages.
Wages are up in relation to prices.
And spending in the Christmas season was solid. Actually, credit card debt is going up,
Right.
which means that's a consumer confidence. So I really think the economy, which has dictated a whole lot of elections in our lifetime, might favor the Dems, although there are still some doomsayers say this market, the bottom's going to fall out. I don't know. The border seems to be an issue always. Republicans generally, when Democrats are in office, want to talk about the deficit. They never talk about the deficit when they cut taxes, which of course increases the deficit.
But
who knows?
causes
It's a lifetime. Between
Cutting
now and
taxes
November.
does generate a robust economy, but I
Yeah,
digress.
trickle down. Between now and November, that's a lifetime in
Let me
American
throw
politics.
something out to you. I think the public is war weary. We had a war in Europe, and let me tell you, this situation in the Middle East is going to get worse. It's going to involve more countries and more geographic areas than where they're located right now.
And a subject maybe for a future discussion with some people, but as long as we don't have soldiers on the ground,
Right.
we were spending $1 billion a day or whatever it was in Iraq and Afghanistan, accomplishing absolutely nothing. I think we can't pull out of Ukraine, and I think our support for Israel will always be there. So you're right, war weary, but I'm not sure what the alternative is.
On a happy note,
Yes, happy.
hats off to Coach Ragland, the U of E basketball coach. Is he doing a tremendous job or what?
He is. They lost a tough one here to Indiana State, but to 10 wins.
10 wins,
He's already
yeah.
been recognized, getting awards. I hope he stays here. I hope that they continue to be successful. And hats off to David
If
Ragland.
memory serves, he's a Harrison guy.
I think that's correct. His mother's on our school board. Good Evansville family.
Absolutely.
Happy New Year, Your Honor.
Same to you.
And thank you, 3 million people, for watching Shively Shoulders.